Hey there, and thanks for watching. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through my AI-powered lease date extraction tool, a tool that I built using Replit's Agent 3 system. I also will walk you through just briefly how I did that so that any real estate person out there without coding experience, such as myself, could build this type of tool, just to give you a sense of what's possible. You're welcome to try and use this one. This is purely for educational purposes. I haven't fully vetted it for errors. But again, this is more meant to be demonstrative of what is possible today. So you start by arriving here on this page. This is at lease.adventuresinCRE.app. I'll include a link either in the description of the video or on the blog post where this is shared. You click this Start Extracting Dates, and it takes you to just a basic Upload Lease Documents form. And here I can drag in, say, the main lease. This is a hypothetical lease that we use in our AI Edge training program. But let's say that you have a lease with multiple addenda, or at least one addendum. I can pull in that addendum, and that gets added there. And I want it in order of when the document was executed. So in this case, it's in the correct order, but had it come in like so, what I do is I just go ahead and drop it. That way, it will work its way through these documents in the correct order. Now, what do I mean by work its way through? What's going to happen when I click this Start AI Analysis is it's going to begin to send pieces of the lease to a backend AI agent. And that AI will, that piece will come with instructions. The instructions are essentially, this is a portion of a lease. Find within this portion all dates, give each date a name, a value, and a description, and send that back. And so it sends that response back to the app. The app records that response in a table, and then the app sends another piece of the lease. But this new piece that it sends will contain both the piece and those instructions to that AI agent, but also all dates up until that point, such that if the agent finds new language, let's say you hit an amendment that changes the expiration date, the AI agent would see expiration date is 10/31/2030, but this amendment had pushed out the expiration date by 5 years, and it would therefore modify the expiration date based on the new information found in that amendment. So that's how the system works. Now, once we upload the documents, we're going to choose one of two models to use. And the reason I included two here, number one was for testing purposes. I wanted to see if I could create a system where you had the option to send in one or more. But also the API key that we're using here allows for OpenAI, at OpenAI's discretion, to train their next model on any data that goes through that API. That's why I have a nice little warning here. Important API may use your lease to train its model. And so, again, think of this purely for educational purposes, but in particular, if you're sending your lease to OpenAI. Now, I'm using GPT-5, which is a slightly more powerful model in this case than the Claude Sonnet 4, because I'm using low reasoning, but I am using some reasoning. Now, if I send it to Claude Sonnet 4, the API agreement in this particular app with Claude does not allow Claude to train its next models on the data that goes through the API. But either way, this tool will send your lease to either Anthropic Claude or OpenAI, and therefore, buyer beware. One other thing that's important to note is I haven't thoroughly tested this for errors. So similar to how when we release models at A.CRE and they're in call it beta and we get input back from folks, if you see errors, either in terms of the quality of the data that comes back from the AI or actual errors in the app, just shoot us a note, let us know, and the team will be on top of updating this in the same way that we update all our models. So upload those documents. I go ahead and click Start Analysis, and it will begin, again, sending these documents to, in this case, Claude Sonnet 4. And again, this process is sending, they're called chunks, but chunks are those pieces that I'm referring to. And it begins to extract dates from the lease. and I can watch it in real time. It processes approximately 1 page every 30 seconds. And I can open up this here and see the actual log of the chunks. I can begin seeing the dates appearing. And you see it gives it a name, it gives it a value, it gives it a description. And it tells me where in which chunk, if you will, the date came from. And it's just going to make its way through this document over the next, in this case, it looks like about 30 minutes. You'll want to leave the screen open as it works its way through. And at some point it will finish. Now I can manually stop it. So, wow, we've collected quite a few dates, including things like renewal 1 period end, renewal 2 period end, January, February, January, right? And it's just extracting these dates. Late payment grace period, 10 days after rent becomes due. Estimate delivery deadline, first day of January of the applicable calendar year, additional rent date due. And so it's just populating all of these dates. We're at 41 dates already, just a short way through. So I'll stop the processing because it will have the same effect as if we went all the way through. So imagine that we'd finished. You would see the same thing, all dates that had been extracted, some job statistics over here, as well as your log. And then you have the download results, and there's 2 ways that you can get the results. The first is a file format called JSON. And think of JSON as what AI tools like. So that's why I included the JSON. In the event that you wanted to really play with this and take this tool or the output from this tool and feed it into some sort of AI system, JSON is likely going to be your best output for that. You can also give, say, ChatGPT your JSON file, and it will understand it better than it would the human file, which is a CSV file. This will open in Excel for most of you. And what it looks like is something like this, where I see all of the dates, description, that value, the document it came out of, the chunk number, and that's just helpful for you, so you have a sense of where in the document that is. And then section header and total chunk. So you can see that this date was in these couple, first date was in the standard industrial lease agreement header, and you've got these as headers, or what the system interpreted as a header. So call that how to use the tool. Now, you're probably curious how this was built. It's relatively polished considering I built this on a flight from Chicago back to Miami. It was just a couple hours. Now, in fairness, I've used the tool that I built this in quite a few times, and so I had some familiarity with that tool. But what this was built in is called Replit. If you're unfamiliar with Replit, replit.com. And Replit started as a platform to make deploying web applications easy, or software applications easier. So a lot of the complexity that goes into not just writing the code, but actually turning the code into something that lives somewhere. And so Replit, that was their mission early on. And as AI has hit the scene, they've really embraced the idea of let's also have embedded in this these agentic systems to help write the code, not just make the code turn into something. And so recently they released what they call their Agent 3. And it's a multi-agent system that writes code on behalf of end users like you and I, who maybe don't know how to code, but who understand what we want out of code. And so in this case, I wanted a lease date extraction tool. I had actually just gotten out of a meeting where someone said, oh, it'd be so nice if there was a tool existed that you could just drop your lease and it would tell you all the lease dates. And I thought, oh, let me try that out. So what I did, this was the very first prompt instruction that I gave this Agent 3 system, which was, please review all code in this app and describe what it is. Now you look at it, you're like, what does that even mean? Because most people, if you're using Replit, you're starting fresh, you're starting new. But in this case, I actually started with a different app. So what's cool about Replit is if you build an app, you can then clone it and go a totally different direction with that app. And the original app still exists. And so I had built an app that was basically a chat interface. So I could chat with the model that powers ChatGPT and get a response back. And that was all that app was. And it was my experiment with, I wonder if I could replicate a chat experience using Replit. And so rather than starting all over again, I went, okay, I already have my OpenAI API keys uploaded into this app. I understand I know that the OpenAI connection is done in this app. And so I started there and I just said, hey, review all code in this app and describe what it does. And I did that so that this agent had that context to then go from this point, which it just describes that app. And it's actually changed quite a bit. If I were to do this all over again, I probably would just started from scratch because I didn't get a lot of value from doing that, but I did that. And from here, I had my first real prompt. Now, this prompt was actually a prompt that I produced in a separate conversation in ChatGPT. So I sat down with ChatGPT, I get on the plane, and I said, okay, I want an app that does this thing. And I just kind of just dropped my brain out and what I wanted the app to do. And I said, this is what I want the user experience to be. You arrive, you click on a button, you upload some files, you choose the order at which you want those files to be done. And then I want this to sent to an AI to extract dates. And then as I explored it with ChatGPT, I thought, well, what if you can't just send all the files to AI, to a large language model. It's going to overload its context window. It's going to be too much information. And so I said, okay, what are options in which we could send files in pieces? Is that possible? And from that, in this back and forth with ChatGPT, over about 15, 20 minutes, this list, this criteria of what I want in the app came out. And this is what ChatGPT ultimately wrote this based on the notes from that conversation. So this is how I'd like to modify this app. I'd like to turn it into a tool that extracts key dates from a commercial real estate lease. The user will upload one or more lease files via a front-end app, not yet built, but likely in. So even back then I was thinking maybe I'll even just build the front end in a totally different app. The files will come with an order, doc 1, 2. They will be in PDF format. The front end will send the file to this backend app together with the doc order. Again, at this time, I had thought I'll do the backend here, and then I'd build the front end elsewhere. And I actually pivoted a few discussions down to just having Replit build the front end. I thought, well, let me try and see if Agent 3 can build a decent looking front end. And when it built this, I went, this is as good as anything I could build elsewhere. And so the backend app will then do the following with the files. The app will pull out the first 12 paragraphs from doc number 1, the first chunk. The first chunk is sent to OpenAI with a request that it read the chunk and extract all dates from that chunk. It sends back the name of the date. So I just kind of list out what I had in mind and how it works. The app then sends to OpenAI the next chunk from doc number 1 together with the date list and the instructions. Read the chunk, extract all dates from that chunk, use the date list if necessary to assign the dates that are conditional. Continue with each subsequent chunk, proceeding through each doc from start to end and doc by doc per the doc order until all doc chunks have been read and a complete date list created for the docs. That date list is returned to the front end as JSON. Now, that's one of the reasons I use JSON is if this were only going to be the back end, think of the back end as like the engine that powers it. And the front end then would be populated using that JSON, that file type that computer systems like. And ultimately, as I progress through this conversation, and just like you have chat with ChatGPT, it comes to you and then you go back and forth, and I see the app taking form out here to the right as I make comments back and forth, please implement this and review the documentation that, and let's go with option 3. And when I click the test, and we do some testing and just test it, and I found some more errors. And I would say 90% of the work here was not in the features or the design. That comes together fairly quickly. 90% of it is either the testing and or the identifying bugs. And over some period of hours, this app came together that now is what you saw happen. And so someone like me who, at this point I have several years of experimenting with these tools, but I have no coding experience, and my real expertise is understanding what I want an output to look like as a real estate professional, and therefore I can communicate now with natural language to these sorts of tools what I want an output to look like, and they're getting better and better at producing those. Now, a few, let's call them important notes. Like the first note is about human in the loop. I say this in my blog post. I hope you read that. I don't, especially in commercial real estate where the decisions we make have real monetary impact. You get a date wrong and it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars. And so human in the loop is key here. And so it doesn't mean that the human does all the manual review, reading review, but the human uses tools like this and then becomes a validation step, an important validation step in this process. The other thing, again, as a disclaimer, like this is a tool that I built for educational purposes, largely for our AI Edge community. I won't be using it professionally. I don't necessarily advise that you use it professionally. More as an example of what's possible. And so with that, go ahead and play around with it. Let me know if and when you run into bugs. You almost certainly will. The team will update this as we get time and as we get your feedback. And otherwise, thanks for your time.